Welcome everyone to Ready Check and the opening week of the EU LCS Summer Split. We're going to talk everything patch 8.11. We're going to try out some new team comps, have a bit of banter. But first, let me introduce myself. I'm Eva Sjokz supporter, joined here by Christiander Frierson and Andrew Vedius. Day 2.
I'm already excited for another day of fantastic EU LCS.
That's really good. We get really excited over here.
Yeah.
Really excited.
Also, it's
Very
the
good.
second day on the job. If you were bored already, it would not be a good sign.
I was not bored yesterday. We had some sick games.
That we did. Let's take a look at the standings after all of those 6 games and what happened after all our teams kicked off the summer split. Vitality, Giants, Schalke, G2, and Misfits picked up their first wins. And immediately, I need to talk about Team Vitality. This is the team that took the earlier parts of spring by storm, and they did the same yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, it's Vitality's meta. We've been saying it. 8-11 is the patch for them, playing heavy aggression in the early game. And for that bottom lane, Attila and Jack Troll, this is their time to shine on crazy picks like the Heimerdinger.
Yeah, they beat Splice just to...
Yeah, they did. They kind of dominated Splice. They did it in a very similar way to which they did last split, where they pick a new bot lane, they crush the bot lane, and then they crush the game. So it was very much fun to watch. And then I felt like that when we look at Vitality, this will be the meta that really shines them straight to the top very quickly.
And if it's anything like in the spring split, we can expect them to just ride on this momentum. It will be up to the other teams to stop them as fast as possible. We'll see how that turns out. Another team I want to talk about is Schalke. High expectations in spring. I think even higher expectations in summer because they have to redeem themselves. And we were looking at this man in the jungle, Maurice Amazing Stuckenschneider. Stucky, no longer a caster. He's back in the jungle. What did you guys think of his first day?
Well, you know, his early game, I think he was very open with it. He wasn't super comfortable with how he felt on stage. But when it came to the late game shot calling, making the moves to just break into the base and tear it open, that's where he really showed up for me.
He was expected to be the leader of this team. He was supposed to be an extra voice. And as you said, he found it difficult to be the voice and keep the mechanics up. So hopefully as weeks go by, those will improve together. But I'm pretty happy with what we've seen so far. The fact that Schalke did start off with a win is definitely a great start. The question is, can they keep going with the momentum that they've gained off this first win?
If anything, the fact that it was a close game and they just made a call is better than a lot of the games we saw out of them out of spring, so they should ride that momentum just as well. And then our final game of the day was our match of the week. Misfits up against reigning champions Fnatic. Now, Misfits already have a 2-0 record over them in the regular season over Fnatic, and yesterday was actually not pretty at all for the side of Fnatic. This guy absolutely stomped Reckless and the guys.
Right, I'll be breaking down exactly how Misfits exploited Fnatic a little later on, but it was Hans Stama really stepping up, huge plays, flashing forward in 2v2s, in team fights, and that was so exciting to watch.
It really felt like the Misfits came in prepared for this meta. They knew about all the crazy strats that were going to be showing up on the LCS stage, and they said to everyone, like, you know what, we're ready, we know how to shut you down, and the most important thing is they executed upon it, and they actually ended the game, Sjokz. An issue that they struggled with so much last split.
That they did. Now for Fnatic, they also came prepared. We have to say they had a Janna in the bottom lane as an AD carry turned support. They had Kai'Sa with Smite in the mid lane, so you can't really say they didn't prepare. It's just that maybe they didn't adapt enough or weren't ready for what Misfits was going to throw at them.
I just don't want Reckless playing Janna. Put him on something that can carry a game. Everything else is fine. You can try it again, but put Reckless on something that deals damage.
I agree.
You agree. We'll see what happens with yesterday being our first view of patch 8.11 rather in Europe. At least let's take a look at a couple of other things that we saw emerging. Heimer and Fiddlesticks are something we saw 2 times, and 2 times it was destructive. Vitality's game as well as G2, there was no answer. Why is this so strong?
It has so much pushing power, and it's surprisingly hard to gank. I don't know how many of you guys at home have played against a Heimerdinger, but even when you have 3 people, the fact that you can hide within the turrets, you have the immediate crowd control of the Fiddlesticks as well. It's a surprising amount of damage, and it's just hard to kill these 2 very squishy champions, but just very, like, obnoxious.
And annoying CC, especially out of Fiddlesticks. I think that just makes that combo just annoying.
Yeah, you've got to bring like 3, 4, maybe even 5 people to the bottom lane to shut these guys down because they will just build a huge advantage with that lane priority, and it makes it so hard to punish.
And I think what's great to see as well is the fact that we saw it from Shannon and Wadid, and one of the big criticisms that we had for that bot lane was that they couldn't be big carries to their team, they couldn't be star performers, but when you give them these slightly different, slightly more innovative bot lane, they're able to show what potential they do have, and they were big carries for this game.
And this is kind of a discussion I want to have. It seems like the meta meta is enabling people to think outside of the box of their role particularly. That there's been a lot of discussions about marksmen, and now they have to learn a whole new set of traits. But if we look at all the players yesterday, 18 players picked their champion for the first time in pro play ever. Now, something that springs to mind is Sjokz on Taliyah, and he was saying in the interview, well, yeah, I can practice this champion a lot, but it's going to take a long time for me to get that same feeling as I do with junglers, like an Olaf, where I just throw an axe and run in. Now you're Taliyah, so yeah, it's going to take some time.
Right, definitely these players will need some games on the different champions, but I think for all roles besides marksman, the transition should be a little easier because, let's face it, they've had to play different styles of champions before. Marksman, though, bot laners, they've only had AD carry, so playing a Janna, playing an Ornn, playing a Mordekaiser is going to be a very different skill set.
For me, what's really stood out on patch 8.11 is the jungle role. We saw 7 unique jungle champions being played yesterday, and that just makes me really excited because last split we saw a lot of the same back and forth where it was like Olaf, Trundle, Skarner constantly being rotated, but now we get the Nocturne. The dankness makes its way onto the Rift. We also get to see things like the Taliyah. We saw a Hecarim coming out yesterday as well. Just so much variation in the jungle role means that there are so many different styles. And that really brings a lot of excitement to me because so many comps in the past were dictated by solo laners, but that's not the case anymore. And the jungle and bot lane position will really dictate the different styles you have available in the current
And
meta.
even though there's a lot available in the jungle, I feel like for a large part, it is still things that are considered meta at one point in time. For instance, the Nocturne was definitely something that got played a lot about 2 years ago, and now it's something that gets picked. It's not as drastic maybe as a marksman changes, so I hope that there's junglers with a lot of experience and with a lot of versatility could really spread their wings and show the team what they can do.
Yeah, and there's still like those meta picks like the Skarner and the Trundle that we will just see played on this patch because they are still very powerful. It's just this pool has opened up, and I think now these individual players get to make a choice what fits them in their style.
Exactly that. And basically, as long as we keep seeing Nocturne, I'm going to be a happy chappy. Yes. I know over in the LCK, they've and LPL, they've been trying things like the Xin Zhao, and we've also got a couple of hyper-aggressive early game junglers been popping up. We've seen Master Yi banned, not picked just yet, so I know there's still more to come, which is just very, very cool.
I have to say, I'm really impressed with your restraint right now, because yesterday Cap said on the post-game lobby that Nocturne mid was something that people picked up from Vedius, and that even the Koreans were looking at Vedius for advice on what to play. Now, I don't believe it, but apparently it's true.
I mean, it was very nice to hear, and I'm glad I inspired him. No one's yet played Nocturne in the middle lane.
Yep.
All I can say is, guys, listen at home. If you see an Aurelia in the mid, Nocturne is a hard counter. Get the Nocturne out, really strong in the middle lane. You can check my ob.gg for more builds.
We will definitely do that. Things, they got pretty crazy yesterday, so we also wanted to ask some other people what they thought. So we checked in with our French casters over at O Gaming to ask what they thought. Let's take a listen.
Alors, ma première, moi, vraie grosse surprise, bon, avant tout, c'est la compo des Fnatic avec la Diolène double support, bon, certes, qui s'est fait écraser, mais ça restait de la fraîcheur avec le smite, de la Kai'Sa-mid, avec vraiment le support esclave qui donne tout pour elle.
Ouais, il n'y avait pas qu'un seul support, effectivement, et voir Janna être jouée par Reckless en bot lane, ça, c'est définitivement une surprise.
Alors moi, ce que j'attends du Day 2, eh bien, c'est tout ce qu'on n'a pas encore vu. Donc les Nunucartus, voilà, les Nocturnes qu'on n'a pas trop vu encore, le Tariq Metroïque, certes, qui a été ban, mais qu'on n'a pas vu. Il y a plein de choses encore non explorées sur ce patch et sur cette méta.
Ouais, on est très impatient de voir ce que les joueurs européens ont à proposer sur la metagame instaurée par la LCK. Donc Chaîne Nocturne, Darius notamment, qui sont des pics absolument vitaux. Et surtout, j'aimerais bien voir un petit Vladimir en botlane être sorti. Au lieu d'être banni, ce serait pas mal.
C'est dur de juger l'état des équipes après une journée. Normalement, on attend au moins la moitié de la saison. Fnatic, par exemple, n'a pas eu le temps de jouer, mais j'ai trouvé Vitality et G2 vraiment bons. Et Vitality, on les attendait sur cette méta, Twix.
Exactement, une équipe très dynamique qui a fait ses preuves déjà durant le Spring Split. Mais personnellement, si je devais miser sur une équipe un petit peu à l'aveugle comme ça, j'irais plutôt du côté de Misfits. Ça fait longtemps qu'on les attend, la marge de progression est là. Maintenant, il ne reste plus qu'à confirmer et à coup de Draven, ça peut se faire.
There we go. Noah and Tweaks letting us know what they think. Bottom line being, we saw a lot, but we should expect to see a lot more crazy stuff. And of course, they pick Misfits because Hansama's on that team and they're French. So there we go.
Very much what we've already been talking a lot about. And we do think there's way more versatility to come left in the meta. We've only had one day, Sjokz, and there's a whole other day left to come.
That we did. You can also check out Noah, Tweaks, the rest of the O Gaming crew over on the French broadcast, twitch.tv/OGamingLol. Looking forward to that. But now, yesterday, since there were so many crazy things, we did go on a mission to check out some groundbreaking, interesting statistics from day one. We got nothing, though. We found absolutely nothing. However, and we're just going to do him a favor, Quickshot insisted on bringing us his stats rundown of day one. So just do it, Trevor.
Nothing? Really nothing? Look, okay, stats are my passion, and quick stats especially is where I derive all of my inspiration. It's time to get rid of the fun and turn to some serious numbers, because this is serial business, guys. Let's look at some of the title holders of the summer split, starting with the shortest game. Take a look at this. G2 are currently the holders of the quickest game in the summer split at 23 minutes, 38 seconds. Of course, the opposite of quickest is longest. So the longest game goes to Giants versus H2K, clocking in at a monumental 45 minutes. Of course, with long games, because lots of kills, lots of respawn timers. So they also hold the record for the bloodiest game, 22 kills. Now, the last stat is the one that really interests me. The last stat is the one that, you know, keeps me excited, because a lot of people talk about these bruisers and marksmen don't exist anymore. Well, 6 out of 10 of our AD carry players picked a ranged marksman in the bottom lane. So that's fact. For anybody that has been aware of quick stats for a while, you know just how much I love my dragons. Yesterday, a total of 10 dragons were killed, 5 of which were mountain, 2 of which were ocean, 1 was cloud, 2 was elder. That's not a surprise to those of you stats aficionados out there. But now I want to take it to the next level. I want to teach you what to do with this information. And this goes for my fellow casters as well. You look at this Infernal Drake number sitting at 0. That means the first Infernal Drake that gets killed today or next Friday will be the first Infernal kill of the summer split, and that is a title worth fighting for. All right, let's turn to some more serious stuff here. I need to pull up the numbers. Let's look at Fnatic, because fans, we've got a problem, okay? Anybody who knows Fnatic knows that they lost their game yesterday. They'll also know that Fnatic currently have a 0% win rate when behind at 15 minutes. And it just begs the question, will Fnatic make Worlds? You tell me. Hashtag ReadyCheck. Let us know. Will Fnatic make Worlds? One last thing. After being inspired and after sitting in that stats seat for a long time, I asked myself the question, how many times do junglers press smite in a game? Well, I did the digging and I found the answer. On average, smite is used 16 times per game across EU LCS for as long as we've been tracking that stat. We need to turn our attention to Joko. Bring him up. Give me his face up on screen, because Joko smashed that record yesterday. He carry the 2 + 7. He did 50% more smites. Yes, 50% more smites than the average, 24 times in a single game. Mind-blowing. Ladies and gentlemen, I have been Quickshot. This has been Quick Stats. They are my passion. Sjokz, back to you.
Oh my gosh. I was skeptical. I have to say, this was probably the most interesting thing Trevor has ever said on it.
Ever. So literally ever. I mean, those were very quick, and I learned a lot of stats. Will my life be ever better? Questionable.
It's not better stats.
They are indeed quick stats. That smite stat, though, wow. Joko turning out to be maybe the best jungler in Europe?
Maybe. What is that? He played Talia. What does that tell you about Talia?
It means that, I guess, Talia needs more smites than the average, or Joko's just a smite god. One of the other.
Yeah, fantastic. Interesting. No Infernal Drakes either. Let's just say there's a lot still to be discovered today. Fnatic needs to make something happen.
They definitely
no
do.
lead yet. So just improvement all around.
That's what I think. And I'm terrified to think of what other stats Quickshot will have in store for us later on the split.
I'm more afraid of which MS Paint background he has. So we'll see. Anyway, talking about the meta, one of the games that absolutely stood out yesterday was Fnatic versus Misfits, and Misfits' systematic shutdown of Fnatic. And I believe Ender is standing by to break down how exactly they did it.
Thank you, Sjokz. I'm going to talk to you about the strategy that Fnatic ran yesterday and how Misfits exploited it at every turn. Basically, you can see right here that Fnatic drafted 3 supports to buff up this man in the mid lane. It's Caps on his Kai'Sa. Basically, what you want to do, you put all the resources you can into that man so you can be so many levels ahead of everyone else and just carry the game straight up. But with this strategy come 3 clear weaknesses. The first of which being that it requires time and levels to scale. And Misfits, they drafted strong skirmishing with the Camille, the Morgana, some pick potential in the early game. And they started it off strong at level 1. They went for this invade, which is exactly the correct approach against this funneling strategy. You want to put a lot of pressure on them early and shut them down before they get scaling. Unfortunately for them, Caps was an absolute monster, flashed forward to steal away the red buff at the end of this clip. But it's a total mess with flashes and summoner spells being blown everywhere that honestly could have ended so much worse for Fnatic if Caps didn't secure that red buff. If he doesn't do that, he's a level 1 Kai'Sa without a support, and it does not look good for Fnatic through the rest of the game because Maxlor could have just had that early pressure, invaded the other side, and been totally crazy. But the other issue with this composition is that you don't have a jungler, so you can't pressure any of the lanes. And Misfits, they drafted a Morgana and a Draven in the bot lane, so they always had pressure and were able to assist here with the second red buff invade. They pick off Caps right at the start. And then there's a level 3 Broxah. This support is so far behind that you can burst through him so quickly. And I think a lot of teams will try to punish that fact in coming games if this is played again. But that, of course, means with all your resources funneled into just that one player, if that player dies, you lose. And Caps here is not even ahead. He's level 10, Sjokz is level 10. He's the only damage dealer on this team. So there's just no DPS in this fight. Misfits can tear through him. He tries to go for a hero play at the end of this, picking off Maxlor in the back lines, but it is too little too late. He fell behind, and that meant Fnatic just could not win. So Sjokz, that's how you beat this hyper carry comp.
That is how you do it, and I think everything to Misfits, the fact that they came in prepared, because it's not just about preparing the picks that work for you and the compositions, but it's also about adapting to what the enemy does. And I think this was a schooled example of how Misfits had just antidotes against everything that Fnatic was pushing out.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think you did a great job of breaking down really how you can shut that funnel strategy, or funnel strategy down. And the really big thing that I think was worth highlighting is just the lack of jungle pressure. We talked a lot about how Handsummer was this guy that really stepped up for us, and we're probably going to talk more about him later on in the day, but the fact that he was able to draft a Draven Morgana bot is largely enabled because there is no jungle presence. You don't have that effective jungler, and when you have a free 2v2, you just get so much more damage in your comp that it becomes very easy to run away with the game.
How do you look at the theory crafting from Fnatic in the light that it was the first game of the split? Caps also was here in PGL saying it was indeed the first game, tried a couple of things, maybe we'll revisit things. I mean, there are some reasons why we say, okay, you know what, you get a pass from us.
Right, I'm glad that they tried it, but I really don't think that this strategy sticks around for much longer, because if you're drafting heavy priority in the early game, strong individual laners, you can just constantly invade and shut down the carry from actually getting that advantage.
So personally, I think that it can work. I think you just need to invest a little bit more in terms of early vision and understand what the enemy team is trying to do in order to shut you down, because in my head, the answer then is to just trade map sides of the jungle so that you're constantly getting resources into that individual carry, but it depends on how committed teams are into wanting to draft this style. And I also think you need a fallback. Stop putting Reckless on Janna is the TLDR that you mentioned earlier.
Right, I think my personal take on it is that it is much more up to the team playing against to shut it down than it is for the team that picked the comp to actually execute it. It's pretty easy to go around the map farming everything and not put down any pressure at all. It is more difficult to actually put down the pressure in the early game and make plays.
And it is also a tangible example of how things that you practice in solo queue or that you practice composition might not always work against a team that is more prepared than the general team that you would meet. Now, since we've been talking about the meta so much, we're going to move on to a bit of an exercise for you analysts. What our producers did is they went into a game and they randomly locked in 5 different champions. And in Instalocked, I'm going to make you guys make work of the composition. tell me where each champion would go and how it would work out. So we have a Teemo, a Graves, a Shen, a Rammus, and a Yasuo.
So
go ahead.
So we can put these champs wherever we want in it, and we got to make a comp work.
Okay. And tell me why and why the
Yeah. Okay. So Ender, I'm thinking we got to put Rammus in the jungle. Oh, we got Graves or Rammus?
Yes.
No, so me personally, I'm looking at Graves in the jungle.
Okay.
I want to see Rammus Yasuo bot lane because Rammus can get the knock up with his Q for Yasuo to ulti off.
I like that. And you also have the taunt to set up for the Yasuo as well. I like that. I think we put Shen top.
Oh, boring. I knew you were going to say that.
I think we put Shen top. So the only alternative to that is we do an Auto Omni special. We put Rammus top lane. We do a Yasuo Shen bot lane, or better yet, we do a Teemo
Shen. Yes.
Teemo Shen bot lane, Rammus top, you have a Yasuo mid, and a Graves jungle.
I'm trying to put me in the position that I'm playing against a Teemo Shen bottom lane, because I think, oh, Shen pretty easy, and then he taunts me, then I get blinded, and then I get poisoned.
Yes.
Annoying.
So you have a lot of pressure bot with Teemo Shen, you have high clear speed jungle with Graves, you have a bot lane you can gank, a top lane you can gank, and then you have hyperscaling with the Yasuo. And let's say Teemo's a late game carry as well. You've got AP damage, you've got AD damage. I think this is like a premier
How do you engage in a team fight?
So, how do you engage in a team fight? You got Rammus flying forward with a Shen on his head, and then you have the Yasuo ult to follow. But I just want to sneak in real quick that a Teemo Shen bot lane is a nightmare to play against as a marksman because you have the blinding dart and then chain that with Shen's W. They can't auto attack anyone.
Literally ever. Literally ever.
So is this a comp that would work in the current EU LCS meta?
Yes, I say it would. I think it would.
Which team would go for this?
Vitality.
Yeah.
I want to see some Attila Teemo. That would be hype.
I think that's a cop-out because every comp you would think that Vitality would go for. No, really love it. Really love what you've done. Would you guys play this?
If I get to play Yasuo, yes.
If I get to play Teemo, yes.
Okay, well, settled. Fantastic. I hope we see a similar composition. I don't want any Shen. Let's see. I definitely want to see Yasuo today. And Teemo, I don't think we've seen that in a very long time in the LCS. But there you go. Call to action. Anyway, let's take a look at the teams that could be employing this strategy on day 2. Roccat versus H2K up first. I'm immediately drawn to Schalke versus Fnatic, since Fnatic really has something to make up for yesterday. And Schalke, if they were able to make this statement and take down Fnatic, that would be a phenomenal start.
Yeah, it's going to be a very good game. I think Fnatic are going to go back to the basics a little bit. Don't want to see the Jan. I've already said that for Reckless. Also, maybe not that hyper carry combo out of the jungle. I'm still not sold that it is going to be something that teams will be able to make work out.
Personally, I'm quite looking forward to Roccat versus H2K. I think that both teams kind of had a disappointing performance yesterday. I think that they will be able to bounce back in today's games. And with a lot of the meta still unexplored, I think we could see some quite creative stuff coming out from both these teams, which will result in quite a back and forth game.
I'd love to see your predictions, and I think we will in just a second. And it also makes me remind you guys at home that you can actually play in the predictions, as you can see there. You can send your predictions for all 5 games ahead of each day's games at LOL Esports. Yesterday, fans, not so good. You guys lost to Ender in the Fish Show, and Vedius is going to say, I was number 1 too.
I was number 1 too.
It's because he copied all of my predictions.
Yeah, who copied who? Come on.
Oh, Ender.
There we go.
You made a brutal mistake for game 1, though.
Brutal mistake?
Look, the fans are on my side.
Yes. So why do you think Roccat is going to beat H2K then?
I liked the plan that Roccat came in with in yesterday's game, honestly. They failed to execute on it, but G2 just looked miles ahead in far of like understanding the meta and actually executing on a strategy. And I don't think that they're going to lay down in this first game.
You know what? I love it. You're all sheep, but you are a Roccat, which is a wolf?
Tiger.
Tiger? Can't remember.
You're a cat. Fearsome.
A cat, of course. It's a Roccat. Oh my.
It's in the name, Sjokz.
How long have we known this? I don't know, but I like that you're going a different way because all the rest, Misfits versus Unicorns of Love, seems pretty straightforward, unfortunately. For
everything else is boring.
Yesterday. Everything else looks pretty straightforward. I think there's upset potential in Schalke versus Fnatic.
So Quickshot and Deficio both said Schalke for that Fnatic series. They don't have faith in Reckless, and they don't think that he will be able to. If he's not playing carries, how long will that last for? Does he even believe the 80k role is strong enough? Is up for debate. That's why they think Schalke could take it. I personally think they're wrong. So we'll find that one out later today.
Yeah, I do want to take a minute to look at Splyce versus G2 Esports. That's the last game of the day, and for me, it's definitely a huge one. Again, it's a rematch of our semifinal in the playoffs, and Splyce yesterday versus Vitality got blown away, and G2 on their end absolutely crushed Roccat. Do Splyce have any chance in that matchup?
I personally think, based on what I've seen, no. Largely because I felt like that their bot lane just underperformed. They kind of got completely surprised again. They didn't know how to handle the pressure. And I think that with Hyun and Wadid being creative individuals, they could be going up against another creative bot lane that I don't know how well they'll be able to deal with. There's a fly in my face.
There is a fly being annoying. We are going to dive straight into our preview of Roccat versus H2K because we're getting close, 5 minutes away. Also, if you enjoyed this Ready Check, whatever you want to see, tweet at LL Esports, hashtag Ready Check. But now let's take a look at H2K versus Roccat. And both teams had a rough first day. I think that's fair to say. But for H2K especially, their game versus Giants was extremely devastating because it looked like they had it in the bag.
Yeah, the Betsy backdoor was totally heartbreaking for them because I honestly was really worried for them. They had this composition that needed to land poke and get the big all-ins. And I didn't see them executing on it. But then they finally won a team fight, but didn't realize Betsy was going for the base.
I love the decision-making from Betsy as well, because the moment that fight was started, Betsy was like, okay, we have a pushing wave mid, we can run towards the base, and I think I can end this game. Azir, late game, full items, he takes these towers super quickly, and they were able to secure it. And I imagine the comms were just like, stop the bases, gives your life for the bases. And Betsy was able to find a very surprising turnaround.
Yeah, Ruin during the whole replay was running down the rest of H2K through the mid lane to stop those ports.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that it's H2K that must be really devastated from how that happened, but it's something that you really have to brush off, especially knowing that we saw this guy on screen, Selfie, have a really great performance up until the moment they lost the game. And I was really glad to see that, knowing that with the meta, Sheriff might not necessarily find his own, but Selfie showed up.
Right, I think Selfie going forward on the Zoe, he landed so many sweet bubbles into the big one-shots. As you can see from this replay around the Baron, it was a pick that looked very, very strong for him, and I want to see him move towards again.
And I gotta ask you guys, when we look at H2K, the story of the spring split was really that when the roster changes came through, Sheriff stepped up. He was the man to fear. He almost single-handedly carried H2K to playoffs. It wasn't enough in the end, so they need these early wins. And that is why I have some question marks with the Karma. I know it was the compositional plan, but Sheriff is a guy you really want to enable, and a Karma's just not going to do that for you.
I completely agree with you, Sjokz. I feel like that when we look at this H2K roster, you need to enable the secondary carry on this team, which typically you'd consider Selfie, but right now it looks like that it is Sheriff. And let's put him on a carry. Let's see what he can do. We're giving him the reckless treatment. No more support for this guy in the bot lane.
No more for him. We'll see what Veteran comes up with, knowing that H2K went 1-7 at the beginning of spring. They need to pick up some wins. They don't want to get in that negative momentum again if they want to make it to playoffs. So let's take a look at who they have to beat to get off to a better start. Roccat. And it's been a bit negative because these are two teams that didn't start out with a win. And Rockat's loss to G2, well, G2 was simply too much on day one, I believe. They had a really good composition. Every 5 members of G2 crushed Roccat, honestly. So let's look at the positives. Today, they should have a more level playing field.
Exactly. And again, I want to say that their plan coming into that game against the Fiddlesticks Heimer in the bottom lane was draft-heavy engage with the Xayah, the Rakan, even the Hecarim was all about accessing those 2 immobile carries. They just weren't able to execute on it, and that was something that was plaguing them all last split.
It certainly was, and I feel like that coming into today, they will be able to better execute on their strategy. I think that they tried to go for a couple over-aggressive plays, which, as you rightly identified, G2 very quickly shut down. But I think some of the big changes that we will see are, well, some of the things I think will keep the same is that Norskarian on playmakers. Yep. I do have to give credit to his Rakan yesterday. He had some phenomenal individual moments where he really was able to step up, but I do want to see a little bit more creativity. I don't really want to see Xayah. While the Hecarim was very cool, I think that Memento needs to take a little bit more of a backroll enabler role to set up Blanc to succeed, and I want to see those 2 carries, the Blanc and the Hikyu, to be the individuals that can take Roccat to a win.
Yeah, and I think for both teams, after kind of the way they lost yesterday, I don't want to see them lose that proactivity, because the last thing you want is to get stuck in a grudge match that goes for 50 minutes and then it's a coin flip if you can win it or not. I really want to see them leave it all on the Rift and go for it. Predictions-wise, I know that you guys have different opinions, so why don't you argue why it is that Roccat has no chances of winning, and same for you in H2K.
So personally, I think that Sheriff will be returned to a carry today, and I think that given the performance that Selfie showed yesterday and the potential I know Sheriff has, I think that those 2 players just straight up outclass that of Rockat's carries, and I think that that is a big reason why they'll be able to take the win.
Yeah, for me, I think Roccat is going to be able to shut down Sheriff in the bottom lane. I want to see some more of the ideas of what they had yesterday, make the plan work out this time, get some early action from Memento on that bottom side.
Yeah.
It's all right, Ender. The first time being wrong, better to be
Wait
next to me
a
than
second,
next to
wait
the
a
physio.
second, Vedius. We'll find out soon.
I also have to say I'm not envious of your job, since it is hard to work with the kind of the examples we have already. Only a couple of games, and the meta seems to be bonkers all over the place. But what is sure is that H2K, they just need a good start in this first weekend, and the same goes for Roccat. So that is why I hope that these teams leave it all on the Rift and show us that they want to win. And with that, we are ready to kick off the day. Let's head down to our casters for Roccat versus H2K.
Thank you very much, Sjokz, and greetings to all you esports fans. I'm Devin Pyrotechnics Young, and I'm here with everyone's favorite Dane. It's Martin DeFicio Linga. Now, I know there's not a lot of choices, but that's okay. You're definitely my